It's a special edition of Locked On Hornets because we're actually doing a crossover edition with Locked On Hawks. That's right. Brad Rowland is going to be joining us to talk about the play-in matchup, the 9-10 matchup between the 9-seeded Hawks and the 10-seeded Hornets. It's all today, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
You are Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets and it's Locked On Hawks. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, your teams every day. I don't know how to do this and speak for Brad. I'm just trying to get through the intro the best I can. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Check out PrizePicks.com and use promo code NBA or go to your app store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available on all platforms. That includes YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Walker Mail, Doug on Twitter at Doug Branson LOH, the show handle on Twitter at Locked On Hornets and Locked On Hawks and BTR Rowland. That's where Brad comes in, part of not only the host of Locked On Hawks, it's also part of Dime Up Rocks, Sportsline, Battery Power, SBN, Up Rock Sports. All of that's on his bio on Twitter. He's a Renaissance man. He's Renaissance Rowland. Brad, how are you doing?
I appreciate the kind words. Trying to live up to that billing, I suppose, for the rest of this podcast. But thanks for having me, and this should be fun to talk about as we have a pretty big game to cover in a couple days.
I want to see that in your bio, by the way. Renaissance Rowland. I want to that is the show's objective now. I don't really care about your analysis of the Hawks, even though we're going to get to that. I just want to make sure
Great tease.
that in your bio that you put Renaissance Rowland. I guess we'll get to this game. The way that it was posed to me, so we're doing this at night. I completely forgot that we were going to be doing this crossover pod. Doug texted me, immediately had to set up. And yes, I am wearing the shirt and really, sorry, all of the clothes that I was wearing in yesterday's episode, quote unquote.
Wow.
So
Walk of shame.
More like the Walker of Shame. And so I apologize for not.
I'll do the jokes around here
already. No. Walker of Shame is good. That's good. Walker
You're the professional radio guy and you show up late. I get dressed up. I'm wearing the duds. I'm wearing, you show up late. You're supposed to be the pro.
you're wearing a tuxedo right now, and I'm wearing the same exact thing.
Unbelievable.
I hope that I don't wear it on Wednesday. That's when I'm really bad. But it was posed to me that we are supposed to be using this time to get to know one another, almost like the first date between Locked On Hawks and Locked On Hornets. And so, Brad, I will allow you this time to introduce yourself, how you got here, the end of the 82-game regular season going into the play-in matchup. How would you describe the road that led you to this 9 seed?
Yeah, I guess it began in the mid-'80s. No, I'm kidding.
Take us all the way back.
Tell
us all the way.
Yeah. It's been a weird year for the Hawks in a lot of ways, which, of course, as you guys well know, covering the team that you cover every single day, it's a grind to do every single day. And with the Hawks, they started pretty slowly, and they never really recovered until like the end of March. They've been playing pretty well lately, so the feeling and the vibe is a little bit better than it was. But coming off of the conference finals appearance, I don't think anybody projected the Hawks to be in the 9-10 matchup, including themselves. I think to a man after the game on Sunday, the finale that they had in Houston, which they won and should have been pretty happy, they were all kind of saying, like, look, we didn't expect to be here. It's not where we want to be, et cetera. And I think that, objectively, they've been playing pretty well for the second half of the season, but the first half was kind of maddening. And even the second half, they've had a couple of, weird games is the way that I will put it. Some bad losses along the way that have not been very consistent this season. It's been a buzzword throughout the campaign. And given where the heights have been, like when they play well, they are really, really good, as we saw last year in the playoffs with a very similar roster. But when they don't play well and they kind of go through the season and kind of go through the motions, they can lose to anybody on any given night. So it's been kind of a maddening campaign, but here we are, and they're on the bright side. You want to spin it positively. They're 26-14 in the last 40 games, which is pretty good.
Yeah,
I'm curious, Brad. Like, when did you know? When did you know that this season was not going to go like everyone thought it was? Because I'm sure, beginning of the season jitters, there's a lot of things that you can say to kind of explain away a weird start, especially when a team comes off an Eastern Conference Finals type of season. But when did you know, like, something's rotten in Denmark?
I think early on they had a very early West Coast trip, and coaches and players hate that. I've talked to people around the league long enough to know that those West Coast trips, the two that you do every year if you're a team from the East Coast, are treacherous. And they had one like the second week of the season, and they went winless on that trip. And it wasn't as if they lost to any bad teams. They had a brutal schedule. It was like Utah and Phoenix and all these good teams, but they lost them all. And the Vibes were really bad at that point in time. And you look up and they're like 3-7, 3-8 in the standings. And it wasn't a disaster if you took a step back and looked at it like, look, they just lost to some good teams. But from that point forward, they're basically digging out of the hole that they dug for themselves, to be fair. But they certainly never had any momentum going forward until really late in March. So I'm not sure if that was the moment where I thought it was going to be a long year, but that was the moment where it kind of occurred to me like, well, this is not going to be an easy 48, 50 win kind of season. When you start 3-7, 3-8, it's just kind of hard to come back from that. You have to be really good the rest of the way. And they were better than that the rest of the way, but certainly not quite toward the level that they thought they were going to be.
All right, Doug. Brad described how they got here with the Atlanta Hawks. How would you describe how the Charlotte Hornets got here at the end of the 82-game season?
Well, the Hornets came into this season with a lot of young talent, a lot of young promise, and players that were developing and were going to continue to develop. But, the one thing coming into this season that we saw as a gaping hole was the center position. They do sign Mason Plumlee before the season got started, but we all felt like, okay, and well, this can't be what we're heading into the season with. And they did. And so I think you and I had this discussion about like, well, they can still make some regular season waves, but I'm not sure that they can really, sustain a playoff run if they don't have a legitimate NBA level rotation at the center position. But they got off to an amazing start, best start in franchise history, in fact. And the wave kept going, and they did, but the defensive issues showed themselves pretty early, and then they got hit by a little bit of injury bug, a little bit of COVID bug, which a lot of teams got hit with, and they went through this period in the middle of the season we called the valiant effort season, where they were just dealing with, 3 starters out, 5 total players out, just trying to survive, putting up great efforts, but coming up short. They were able to slowly get some players back. They seemed to get their footing. And then the defense, the bottom just completely fell out of the defense. And towards the end of the season, they went on a pretty awful stretch. They lose Gordon Hayward for a long time. That doesn't help things. But near the end of the season, they do finally settle out a little bit. But a lot of similarities, Brad, which I'm sure Walker can talk to, between the Hornets and the Hawks, with the inconsistencies, with the poor defense, with an injury to a major player. The Hawks, dealing with the absence of John Collins. The Hornets with Gordon Hayward. A lot of similarities, Walker.
Yeah, I think so too. You mentioned, Brad, that inconsistency was kind of a buzzword this season. Somebody texted into the ESPN affiliate earlier today, like, one word to describe the Hornets season was erratic. And it was the Charlotte Hornets earlier this year getting off to the great start and then having an awful February where I believe they went 2-10 and then finishing on a strong note, starting with that 5-game winning streak that began against the New Orleans Pelicans. LaMelo Ball starts to put it together, turn a corner even more so than what his all-star season had entailed before that. And, here we are as a 10 seed, having finished strong, but this Eastern Conference is as good as it's been in a very long time. And so 43-39 doesn't get you what it used to. It doesn't get you a 7 seed, 8 seed playoff
I swear.
spot.
It's affecting the Eastern Conference.
It's affecting the NBA.
It's affecting my takeout orders. I mean, geez, Louise.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. And so the Charlotte Hornets and the Atlanta Hawks, they will have to fight to see who gets the chance to then play the loser of the 7-8 seed, to then see who gets the chance to move on and play the Miami Heat and try to get a series against Miami. Let's talk about the strengths and the weaknesses of each franchise in just a moment. But first, I do want to talk about PrizePicks. All right, NBA fans, I know you're looking for a daily fantasy option for the NBA. And if you are, then you need to try the award-winning app PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. I love it. I know you will too. And it's because it's easy to use. You pick 2 to 5 players and over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry, and it's just you versus the projected numbers. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. It's safe. They offer fast withdrawals, and they use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. So what you can do for a limited time is go to PrizePicks, because they have an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our users. Users get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point. But you must use code NBA. That's right. This is an exclusive offer available to Locked On fans. So sign up today and use code NBA, $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePick entry scores a single point. Also want to discuss Bet Online. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of the Major League Baseball season, which is already in full swing. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Let's talk about the Hawks' strengths and weaknesses and the Hornets' strengths and weaknesses coming up next on the Locked On Hornets, Locked On Hawks podcast. It is the crossover edition of Locked On Hornets and Locked On Hawks. We welcome host of Locked On Hawks, Brad Rowland, to the show. Brad, the Atlanta Hawks, they are playing a lot better. What is the turning point? Why are the Hawks playing so much better towards the end of the season compared to what got them in this situation where they unexpectedly dropped all the way to the 9 seed in the first place?
It's a little bit of everything, I think. It's a boring answer, but I will explain myself to some degree. I think that part of it is that they've been playing better defense. And if you look at the overall season stats, the numbers are pretty gruesome for the Hawks defensively. Bottom 5 in the league, kind of bad, which if you look at the talent, is not that surprising necessarily. But last year when they got hot, it was very similar. They were able to post like a league average defense in the second half of last season. And this year it's been not far off of that. I think the difference really just is the fact that Clint Capella has been playing like at an all-NBA kind of defensive level in the second half of the season. That helps them for sure. He can't do it all, but certainly having an elite rim protector does a lot of things for you, and just a little bit better from everybody else on the perimeter to make the entire package work. Because, as bad as the Hawks have been, as bad as their talent can be sometimes defensively, they shouldn't be this bad as far as it's kind of been my line all year long. Is they should not be 27th, 28th in the league in defense. 20th? Sure. Sign me up for that. That makes a lot of sense. But 27, 28, not so much. And then, not to be skeptic necessarily, but the Hawks have also played a very easy schedule in the second half of the season, which we all saw coming. Preseason even, I talked about this a lot. The schedule in the first half was much harder than the schedule in the second half. That's definitely been the case. And, given that they were able to go on this run, I'd sort of drop this on people today on Twitter, and I'll say it here. The Hawks haven't won a road game against a good team in about 2.5 months. They just happen to win. They just happen to win at home. They've been really hot at home, which of course is relevant because they'd be playing this game on Wednesday at home. But they've been kind of just beating the teams that they're supposed to beat, which is not the worst thing in the world. Obviously, you have to do that along the way. But that was what plagued them early on in the season, was that they were losing games that they shouldn't lose, and now they're winning those games. So it's a little bit of everything, but the defense has been better, and the schedule's been pretty nice.
What would you say, Doug, the strengths of the Hornets right now?
Well, let me just say first that I'm extremely jealous of Brad for having an elite rim protecting center, because it is, again, the one thing the Charlotte Hornets need to be a competent defensive team. Not having one has, caused all of these ripple effects across the defense, because you got to play a lot of junk defenses. You got to play small. You got to play zone. You got to make up for the fact that you don't have that rim protection behind you, and they don't have guards that are especially great, at keeping the ball in front. And so, it all just equals, a bad defensive time for the Charlotte Hornets. But the strengths all lie on the offensive end of the floor, where they have just been an elite three-point shooting team for most of this season. They finished 6th in three-point attempts per game. They finished 8th in three-point percentage. They take a lot of shots at the rim. They take a lot of shots at three. They don't take a lot of two-pointers. They're sort of that perfect modern NBA offense. And they share the basketball. They are 3rd in the NBA this season in assist percentage, and that all sort of goes to one of their biggest strengths, and that's the fact that they have this sort of game changer in LaMelo Ball. And when he gets all the way to the rim, he is just so tough to deal with as a defense, because, you have to worry about him finishing, where he's been pretty good at that when he gets all the way to the rim. But then his passing ability, pocket pass, it's there. He can see the kick out. He can get it to the corner. He can throw it behind his head. He can no-look pass it. When he gets it into transition, gets the pace going for the Charlotte Hornets, he is just a problem. And as the season has gone on, he's only gotten better. He's a walking triple-double threat. He's going to be involved in the starting unit. He's going to be paired with the bench. I expect him. I expect the Hornets to lean a lot on him and Bridges and a lot of their starters, shortening down a rotation that has been pretty long this season. I think they're going to rely on LaMelo to get this offense started. and he's going to need to. I mean, the offense is going to have to play perfect if they expect to win this game.
We went over the last 10 games for LaMelo. The guy's averaging over 23 a game, 47 shooting from the field, 45.7% from deep, and he's doing that on 9 attempts from the perimeter. So lots of great things you can say, as Doug just, I think, went through all of the words for LaMelo and how well he's playing lately. But it's true, and I think LaMelo is being more aggressive. He is starting to hit those shots inside the three-point arc, just like he is from outside the perimeter. So strengths, you mentioned it. They're shooting well. Defensively, we know their weakness. They don't have anybody to really stop a Clint Capella. We know that he's been able to go for like 80%, 7 of 10, 8 of 10 shooting on the Hornets before. But Brad, I want to go to you on this. One of the other strengths, surprisingly so for Charlotte, has been their ability to limit Trae offensively, at least scoring the basketball in the last 6 games. If you look at Trae Young and his field goal percentage over the last 6, the most the highest he's posted is 45%. That was on their January 23rd matchup. But in the other games since January 6, 2021, the field goal percentage he's posted 22, 26, 33, 40, 25 this most recent outing. He's been limited to 7, 15, 19, 9 points in 4 of the last 6 matchups. It seems like the Hornets have always done a pretty good job at limiting Trae Young, hurting the Hornets at least with his scoring. He's put up some big assist numbers, but at least with his scoring. What have you noticed about Charlotte's ability to defend Trae and what's going on the court?
Yeah, that's definitely true. I was watching some tape of it earlier from this year, and even going back to last season, like you said, he's had some issues against Charlotte, and I think if you look at his numbers actually for his career, only the Utah Jazz have done a better job in holding Trae Young down numbers-wise than the Hornets, which is not exactly the team that you would pick. Even you guys who watch them all the time, I think you probably wouldn't guess that in a vacuum. They'd be the number 1 team or number 2 team against Trae Young in his career. But I think a lot of it has to do with just throwing different things at him. Trae, if you let him get comfortable, will just absolutely dice you up no matter what. I think the teams that have the success against him are well coached, and they change things up all the time. And honestly, over the course of a 1-game scenario like this, that is the advantage that you might have as the challenger in this case, as being the Hornets, is that Trae won't have 3 games to figure it out. He's going to have a quarter or a half to figure it out. And I think that, especially given the way that the Hornets have been playing him recently, if you watch the film, they've been trying very hard to get the ball out of his hands. And if you start with the Hawks, it's not exactly a groundbreaking approach. I think most teams now, especially in the second half of this season, have been trying to do that because it's not a secret. Trae Young is the sun, moon, and the stars for the Hawks. And if he gets comfortable and has 40 points, they're hard to beat. His passing is elite as well, but the Hawks don't have overwhelming number 2, number 3 options. So the conventional wisdom now is to blitz him, get the ball out of his hands. And the Charlotte Hornets have done a good job with that if you watch that. Some of the bad shooting numbers are also on Trae. So go ahead.
Yeah. And Doug, we'll end with this on you. Like, look, you look at the play-in tournament teams that the Hornets could have faced. Obviously, I don't think any of us wanted to face the Nets because Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, you don't want to face those guys, even with them struggling as much. We just got the news Ben Simmons is probably going to help them in the play-in tournament and beyond, depending on how far they go. Cleveland, yeah, they don't have that star like Trae Young. They're also a bad matchup because they got 7-footers everywhere, and we don't have one that we'd love to play all that much here with the Hornets. So, like, it's weird. Trae Young is a cold-blooded killer, and we've seen him do this already in the postseason. It's why I'm nervous to dip my toe in those waters. At the same time, it's like the Hawks might have made the most sense if you were trying to choose your opponent if you're Charlotte. How do you feel about all that, Doug?
Trae Young, more like Trae Stung.
All right, you can make the jokes if you want. Come on.
Well, no. Here's how I feel about it. The Hornets have they have been hurt by superstars, but they also have shown an ability this season to key in on a particular player and successfully take that player away. So, I mean, I can think of examples like, I mean, they were able to slow Joel Embiid down by throwing some double teams and some junk defenses at him. Giannis Antetokounmpo in several matchups against the Milwaukee Bucks, they were able to do that. And so and Trae Young, I mean, they've been able to do that. Can they do it again in a 1-game sample? I think it'll be really interesting. I mean, James Borrego, his whole challenge this season has been to find ways to overcome their deficiencies on the defensive end. And so I expect him to throw everything in the kitchen sink in this one game sample. And the real question is, will the players execute on it? Will they start this game with a sense of urgency? Because that's something that the Charlotte Hornets have been lacking at times this season, taking this seriously. They got blown out in last season's play-in, and they seem to remember that, at least on their practice facility. They've got it posted. They've got the box score from that Indiana Pacers blowout. They remember it, but will they act on it? I mean, I think that's been the big question all season. I will say this too, this is a weird wrinkle, is that while Mason Plumlee is not obviously a great rim protector, he is strangely good at like blitzing pick and rolls. Like he's able to get steals and go like point Mason Plumlee, point Plum God.
Yes,
for some of these defensive possessions. So that's kind of a weird wrinkle. I mean, I expect them to really be aggressive defensively early on in this one.
You heard it, Doug, saying Mason Plumlee is going to be the X factor in whether the Charlotte Hornets win this game, this play-in matchup against the Atlanta Hawks. We will put that in the thumbnail. All right, let's talk about Rock Auto before we move on to the last segment. This episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. So why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning? You don't have to do that anymore. Save time and money when using Rock Auto, so you don't have to choose to spend up to even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or your truck, right? Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com. We'll finish up this crossover edition with Locked On Hornets and Locked On Hawks coming up next on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks to our friends at Bet Online, we know the line for this Hornets and Hawks game. It's the Hawks that are favored by 4.5 points. And Brad, you talked about it. Like Atlanta has been playing really well at home. They've been able to win those games, even if they have not been able to beat good teams on the road. As you mentioned, 2.5 months, pretty staggering amount of time that they haven't been able to do it and still finish relatively strong the second half of the season. It's because they've been able to take care of business at home. And so let's ask your prediction now with the Hawks being the favorite. They are going to be in the comfort of their own arena. How do you expect this game to play out, and what do you think is ultimately going to be the final result?
Yeah, I think the line is interesting. You know, I think the Hawks were always going to be favored at home in this game, and 4.5 is, I don't know, sort of a slight nod to the Hawks on a neutral floor, something like that. I'm not sure if that's the case, and you guys can weigh in on that. But the Hawks are 19-3 in the last 22 at home. And going into this week, you know, obviously the Hawks wanted to get to 7-8 badly, but my point was, you know, just don't fall a 10, because what you don't want to have is a road game for your season if you are the Hawks and you can't win on the road, and now they're at home. So I think it would be hard for me to pick against the Hawks in this game, given that they have the best player in Trae Young, in my opinion, and they've been so good at home and they have the experience edge. But at the same time, the Hornets are the kind of team, as you guys well know, that if they have the right night and they're making shots, they can put up 135 points on you in a hurry, and suddenly you look up and you're down by 12 in the fourth quarter. And so it's not like this is an easy game for the Hawks. I want to stress that. I think in terms of variance, the Hornets are a very high variance opponent for Atlanta, which can be good, but also can be very bad if things go badly. So I'll pick the Hawks. The Hawks are the better team if I had to guess it. And if you throw in the home court and just the experience edge, I have to take Atlanta. But I certainly do not think it's like a 80-20 kind of thing. I think it's definitely a lot more narrow than that. And Hawks fans will probably have at least one or two moments where they're not comfortable over the course of this game when the Hornets go on like a 10-0 run and things get a little bit dicey.
I mean, I want to believe in the Hornets. I really do. And I do believe in them long term, but I have not had enough evidence this season to believe in their consistency game to game or quarter to quarter. They've just been that inconsistent with their effort, their urgency, their awareness, their defensive intensity. I don't think they're going. My prediction is that I don't think they're going to get embarrassed for a second season in a row in this play-in. I feel like it's going to be a close first half. It's going to be a little bit of a shootout in the first half, but I think they come out third quarter. Trae Young overwhelms the Charlotte Hornets, and they have to wait one more year to try to make a playoff run. Although I will add this one little, exception to my prediction, that LaMelo Ball is the X factor. You know, I really feel like this is his first legitimate opportunity to make a statement, on a big stage. I know he was with the team last year, but this really feels like his moment, his team right now. this season. And so the legend of LaMelo Ball could absolutely start with a victory through this play-in tournament and getting them into the first round of the NBA playoffs. It would, as I said on the show yesterday, it would be a hell of a story, and we'll see if it comes true.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, right? Like making the parallels between these two teams. Both of the star players play the point guard position. Both are extremely fun. Both are among the best passers in the league. And LaMelo has shown to be a really good three-point shooter, and we all obviously know the kind of damage Trae can do from the perimeter. And Trae had his moment last year. He beats the New York Knicks, does it in Madison Square Garden. He's able to beat the Philadelphia 76ers. And the Hawks move on to the Eastern Conference Finals in a way nobody expected because Trae was such a cold-blooded killer, as we mentioned. Can LaMelo be that guy? And he is really playing well as you end the regular season heading into this play-in matchup. The last time they played, he hit 5 of his 10 threes, LaMelo did. And he goes for 22. It gives you 11 assists and 8 rebounds. Yeah, Doug, I think I share the same exact feelings you do. I want to believe in the Hornets. And you know what I do to a certain extent? Like, I think this is actually going to be very, very close. I think we're going to get a really fun, a really good game. But ultimately, how do you bet against the guy in Trae Young that has shown up in these big games before?
Oh, wow. I thought you were going to pick Hornets. See, this is a good job by you. You kind of went Hawks, and then you went Hornets. Now you're back to Hawks.
The constant theme, right, is to keep you listening somehow. And I just wanted to make you think I was going one way, and then boom, I pulled the rug out from under you. And then I decided to go with the Hawks. I do think it's going to be really close. I think the Hornets cover, right? Like, I think it's going to be one of those games that might come down to the last possession. But in a last possession type of game, Trae Young, the guy is amazing at hitting those types of shots, finding the right play. So I think ultimately Atlanta, they move on, and we'll see. But it should be a fun game. Final thoughts, Brad, on what you think we're going to see. Like, or is there any game within the game that you want to see in this matchup come Wednesday night?
Yeah, we've covered a lot of it. I think it is appropriate, like you guys have said, about it being a close game. These are two teams that have identical records, and they're 2-2 in the season series in the same division. Like, it doesn't get much closer than that on paper in terms of like the expectations in this game. I think if I had to pick an X factor beyond the obvious stuff of Trae and LaMelo and who plays better and all that stuff, it would be how the Hornets fare against the Hawks when they're playing that small unit with PJ at the 5. I think if the Hawks lose this game, it's because they can't stop that group, and it's because they play Capella off the floor or something like that. I think one thing that I'd be worried about there if I was the Hawks is just stopping the Hornets when they go to that group. So if that either doesn't work or the Hawks manage to sort of outscore them anyway, that might swing things. But I mean, on paper, it doesn't get much closer than this. 43-39, 2-2, and division rivals, point guard led. There's just so many similarities that should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a great point, Brad. I mean, in that last matchup against the Hawks, PJ Washington was the absolute X factor, especially late in that game as the Hornets pulled ahead. So, yeah, love a good rubber match. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. But I'll just, my final thought is that if you bet, use Bet Online, but don't bet on the Hornets. It's just you can't win. It doesn't matter.
The last thing I do want to point out for this game before we let Brad go is, Doug, he mentioned us being a really high variance team, which is a term that we have not used, which we absolutely should have quite a bit this season. And the person,
I don't know what it means. That's the problem.
Well, yeah, well, that's okay. I'll let you know later. But just
okay,
know that Kelly Oubre is like most responsible, or one of the players most responsible for us being a high variance team. He's still getting minutes, and it's not like you can go to Gordon Hayward because he's out. Like, does Kelly give you one of those Kelly games that are few and far
tsunami
between?
You talking a little tsunami, papi?
Watch out for the wave, baby. Like, is Kelly coming out, and is he going to do what he did against Chicago? Go 6 of 10 from the field. Like, all right, this is just where Kelly decides to go nuclear from 3-point range. He's actually been shooting better in the last 3 games, 16, 18 points. 6, but only in the 16 minutes that he played against Washington. It is like the break in case of emergency. And man, it's powerful. You don't know what you're going to get. So don't break the glass often, but it's a play-in game. It's March Madness type of scenario. Like, let's just see if Kelly can do some stupid stuff and if the Hornets can move on because of it.
I think both teams, Hawks, Hornets, have had like shrug seasons. Win or lose, you're just like, I don't know what the hell happened. Anyway.
Yeah, that's exactly what I feel like we could be asking. That's Brad Rowland. The dude is awesome at covering not only the Atlanta Hawks, but everything Atlanta sports. I do want to talk to him in another episode, maybe the next crossover, or just at some different point in time about the Atlanta Braves, that whole Freddie Freeman situation. But even if I can't talk to him about it, you can go follow him on Twitter to see everything.
He's a high variance host.
Yes.
Did I use it right?
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
I don't think so. He's more consistent than that. He hosts Locked On Hawks. He is a part of Dime Up Rock, Sportsline, Battery Power SBN. Please go follow him on Twitter at BT Roll. Brad, this was a lot of fun, man. Thank you so much for joining us. And good luck to the Hawks on this play-in matchup between the 9 and 10 teams.
Yeah, it should be fun. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Brad Rowland joining us on this crossover edition on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks to Doug for reminding me to host this edition of Locked On Hornets.
Next time I'll remind you to change your shirt. Yeah, I can smell you. I can smell you virtually.
God, yeah, you're right. You can't smell me. All right. Thanks for making Locked On Hornets your first listen every day. Make your second listen Locked On NBA. Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and it's available wherever you get your podcast. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.